Santino Ferrucci, very controversial driver. A few things that he said that cost him a shot possibly at an F1 career, that he's trying to make a name for himself and re-establish his image in the U.S. and IndyCar. It looks like he's going to be confirmed before the end of the year as the second driver alongside Sebastian Bourdais. Carlin right now may have 2 seats available. Marcus Ericsson, who drove with the old Caterham F1 team, is viewed as one possibility. I still don't think Charlie Kimball's the guy for the third seat. Keep hearing the news that Novo Nordisk, his sponsor, continues to pull back their support as far as the amount of money they are willing to give him to seek a ride. And considering what he did for Carlin, the only top 5, and was much more competitive than Chilton, I think it's a slap in the face of Charlie Kimball that Novo Nordisk keeps pulling back the support on him, because it makes it tougher for him to keep a ride. I mean, it cost him the ride at Ganassi last year. I think it's going to cost him the ride at Carlin, because I think there are drivers out there, say Zachary Clayman DeMelo, Pietro Fittipaldi, who have bigger budgets and might be able to take that right away if it is a ride going to the highest bidder, that third Carlin seat. And I think the same thing applies for the potentially third Rahal seat as well, as far as the highest bidder. So, yeah, it's great that, you have a commitment there with a driver who is battling diabetes, and you have a sponsor there to support, but the sponsor's got to, be able to provide the necessary money to make it possible to secure those rides. And right now, I'd say shame on Novo Nordisk for not providing the money necessary to allow Charlie Kimball to stay in the series, because unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be able to keep that seat at Carlin for 2019.
Well, absolutely, and as we always see in the funny season, as we get into the 2019 season, we see sometimes we see a lot of shake and bake, and it certainly appears that that's what's going to happen this year. A lot of the times during the funny season, the rumors start to speculate about additional races in the next season, additional tracks, or subtraction of tracks, or subtraction of races. What are we hearing there? I mean, are we hearing about any a Brazil race? Are we hearing about a race in Mexico? Are we hearing? I heard some rumblings about Laguna. What all are we hearing about additional tracks or lack thereof?
So Laguna is going to be the last race of the season. That's been a commonplace when it was in the kart series in the late 80s, early 90s. So they're in. Phoenix is out. They just couldn't draw the necessary attendance to keep their spot in the field. And add to that, the track just with the new layout and the more banked dogleg really just did not equate well for the Indy cars to allow for passing. And Circuit of the Americas, the F1 circuit has been added as well, much to the dismay of Eddie Gossett. So I think depending on how the relationship goes there, I'll be very curious to see how Eddie Gossett is willing to share some of the load with Texas and Circuit of the Americas both be on schedule. And it may be a tougher sell for Mark Miles to be able to convince Eddie Gossett to stay on the schedule in the future in the time for as far as renegotiations come, the longer Circuit of the Americas is a successful event. But right now, at this point, nothing going on about Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez at Mexico City. And Brazil, still nothing going there. And right now, yes, IndyCar is gaining ground, but I think right now to add an extra burden where they have to spend the extra money for an overseas race or an extended race where they have to, lockbox the cars and have them transferred by plane to Mexico or to Brazil, I still think we're a little ways away from being able to successfully do that without adding too much of a financial hit on the teams and the series being able to do that, because that was a big burden when they had to make the trip to Sao Paulo, for instance, for the street races a few years ago.
We're talking with Matthew-Embury, our official IndyCar contributor. We're going to get into a little bit of college football talk as well, Matt, because I know that here in just a moment, because you're also a team member of Breaking Rank, which is our college football show. We'll be back on target. We've been having a hiatus due to just life in getting the podcast together, but we are back getting things going this Wednesday with rick-riggin, myself, and you. We'll get into some college football talk here in a moment. But also, according to Racer Magazine, James Solly Sullivan says the new Aim Vaser Sullivan IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship team will not replace or affect its ongoing efforts in the IndyCar Series. Sullivan and longtime partner Jimmy Vasser joined forces with Dale Coyne Racing last season to co-enter the number 18 Honda driven by Sebastian Bourdais in the new IMSA deal in place with Lexus and Canada's AIM Autosports. The duo intends to maintain a presence in both series. Is that sustainable, Matt?
Well, Juncos is trying to do the same thing with the Cadillac program in Daytona Prototype International, so they're not the only team that's trying to make a jump, and obviously you got the Penske Acura program. It should be sustainable for them. It looked like, based on that initially, I thought that might be a sign that they were trying to break away from Coyne. That's not going to happen. They're going to stick with Coyne for at least another year with Sebastian Bourdais and the Sealmaster sponsorship. But keep an eye on it. If it does gain traction, we could see a breakaway team with Vassar Sullivan, possibly involving Bourdais, possibly by the year 2020.
Matthew, let's get into some college football talk. Matthew-Embury also up there in Notre Dame country at 96.1 WSBT. Certainly Notre Dame is on a bye this week, but I tell you what.
Brooks is taking over Notre Dame Stadium tonight.
Oh, yes, that's right. Garth Brooks is up there tonight. I totally forgot about that. You going to the concert?
It's too much of a mess downtown in that area, so I'm just staying away. I got other things to do. That actually earned me money.
I understand. I tell you what, though, yeah, he does a good show. He's been here in Indianapolis, and last year when he was here, I think he did an unreal amount of shows, like 7 shows, unreal. Good show if you ever get an opportunity to see him, Garth Brooks, up there at Notre Dame Stadium. But Notre Dame, though, undefeated. We talked about a lot of scenarios on Breaking Rank and here on The Balance about Notre Dame, about teams that have been challenging to them. But it seems, and it appears, and I know we've talked about this in the past, but it seems like on the surface that when they made that quarterback change right around the Wake Forest game time, that things started turning around. Maybe after all, that was a good decision.
Well, it's clear Brandon Wimbush was struggling, and they had to make a change, especially with the way the schedule was going, because they're getting too close to comfort, especially against Ball State and Vanderbilt. Granted, they did have their issues with Pittsburgh, but again, that was a very bad time to schedule. That was right around midterms, a lot of projects that had to be done as far as schoolwork, and that takes a lot out of you. So I think that had a lot to do with Notre Dame's low, lackluster performance this past week against Pitt. I think you can excuse that, consider they still got the win. But, yeah, the thing right now that you have to wonder, though, is, you hear all these things. I don't know if you were paying attention to Twitter or some of these websites. Tim Brando really went after Notre Dame, saying that they just will not be competitive if they make the college football playoff. The same inferences have been made by Paul Feinbaum. And before you start bashing this school, keep in mind, we don't know what the other schools and who else is going to be else in the playoff. I mean, there may be a matchup where Notre Dame has a chance to possibly get to the final. If they get stuck with Alabama, I mean, you never know. I mean, Alabama's a super team. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that you get to the college football playoff, considering the hoops that Notre Dame has to jump through, I'd say that's accomplishment. I don't think condemnation really is warranted. I mean, we saw everyone bashing Notre Dame when they got blown away by Alabama. They didn't deserve to be there in the college football championship of 2012. They had a pretty tough schedule to get through just to get to that game, and everything that happened before then with, the Manti Te'o scam involving the so-called fictitious Lene Kukua, a lot of distractions there that messed things up. And then ultimately you look at the scenarios and things did not come together on that night. But just to say that them getting there and the same thing's going to happen again, I think is so unfair. I think we just need to wait and see what happens. I mean, Notre Dame could get there. They might not get there. There's still some tough teams. USC is an ever-improving team. And then, obviously, Florida State, you never know what might happen there when they play at South Bend. And then, Navy could be a problem team as well. So we just have to wait and see what happens here. But I think it's very unfair for folks like Brando, Feinbaum, and all these other guys, Mark May as well, that keep bashing Notre Dame and say they are unwarranted just because they're undefeated to make it the college football playoff. If they get to undefeated based on their schedule, I believe they more than qualify to be one of those last 4 teams in the playoff.
Well, you're talking about a little bit about Alabama, and we can't have college football conversations without talking about Alabama. But certainly, they got Tennessee this weekend. Should Nick Saban have Tua park on the bench this week? I mean, it seems like that's a quarterback that, with Tennessee, that's a game that they can do without. Does Nick Saban set Tua? And I'm not even going to try to say his name today against Tennessee, but it looks to me like that would be a good advisable move for Nick Saban to set Tua against Tennessee. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's the thing. Remember, Alabama, even without Tua Tagovailoa, still has Jalen Hurts. And even though, yes, Tennessee just manhandled Auburn at Auburn last week, I don't think they're going to have anything to be able to handle with Alabama, even with Jalen Hurts under center. You just need to protect that knee for Tagovailoa. It's a very freak play where he had the knee issue, and to put any more stress on it and possibly where he tears an ACL or an MCL, knocks himself out for the rest of the season, I mean, Alabama can overcome it because they got another solid quarterback, like I said, in Jalen Hurts, but I'd rather not them going through that avenue, especially when you still have the Iron Bowl game against Auburn, who has nothing to lose at this point, and then possibly Georgia in the SEC championship game or LSU. You still have a couple hurdles to jump here, and I think right now it would be better served to save your ammunition for those games, because I just don't think, even though Tennessee, is riding a little momentum, they're still the same Tennessee team that is not the same Tennessee team that when Phil Fulmer was the coach was a dominant team and a threat to win in the SEC. This is not that team right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get into a lot more college football talk with Breaking Rank host Rick-Riggin, executive producer of The Balance, in the second hour. But certainly as we look through what's going on in the top 25, Jim Harbaugh has redeemed himself. I will eat crow a little bit on Jim Harbaugh. Still overrated, still overpaid, but has delivered some wins for Michigan. Today, though, they've got some brotherly love, if you will, or brotherly hatred, if you will, an in-state rivalry against Michigan State. What are your thoughts on that game?
Michigan State had a big comeback to win in Happy Valley last week against Penn State and knocked essentially Penn State out of the college football playoff picture. But you have the letdown game coming into play. And even though, the game is in East Lansing, I think Michigan does able to escape this game and continue their run to possibly get themselves back into the college football playoff. And especially if you're a Notre Dame fan, you are hoping Michigan does win that game.
Well, as we look around throughout the top 25, what are the games that stick out most for you going on this weekend in the top 25? Well, certainly, again, we'll be talking more about later on the show. But just on a high level, as we walk around the top 25 teams, who do we think might have the biggest chance for an upset, or who do we think might be the opposite direction, if you will, in the top 25?
I think we'll lose Oklahoma this week. I just have a hard time thinking they'll get out of Texas Christian with a victory. TCU, I think, is stinging right now, and they are looking to get themselves back into, a little bit of respect, and the great way to do that is to beat Oklahoma on your home field. So a good chance there possibly for an upset. You look further down the list, the Clemson-NC State game. If NC State is to be billed, they're still undefeated. Giving Clemson a battle in Death Valley would be a great way to go. I don't know if they're going to have enough, though, to beat Trevor Lawrence and company, but that could be a very close game, closer than some people expect. Washington, Colorado. Colorado got embarrassed by USC, a chance to get back in Seattle, possibly knock Washington out. Pac-12 really needs Washington to start winning, though, if they want to have a chance at getting anyone in the college football playoff at this point. And then LSU, are they still legit? They still have another test coming up against Mississippi State today in Death Valley in Baton Rouge. They got the win against Georgia, but, again, that letdown game factor, always a factor there. It'd be interesting to see if Mississippi State could do anything. And I talk about close calls. UCF coming close against Memphis. I believe today will be the day that winning streak comes to an end. I picked East Carolina over UCF, and I love Purdue, but I just don't think Purdue's going to have anything to challenge Ohio State. I think Ohio State wins that game big in Ross-Ade Stadium tonight.
Yeah, Ohio State is, one team that you love to hate, I guess. Certainly, if you're in the Big